First of all, the formulation is a very interesting one. Since when did we find a din like this? I wonder what this means. Also, the word lebesumi is an interesting word. As I say, the shtaker, it says lebesumi. And of course, there's an overarching question. Where does this come from? And what's the source for such a thing? Gemara continues, tells us a story about Rabba and Reb Zera, who were doing Sudas Purim together. Ibsum, they got Ibsum. Rabba got up and killed Reb Zera. Next day, David for him to be returned. Next year, they said, let's do Purim Suda again. Reb Zera said, you can't rely on these kind of nisim. It's an interesting story, and of course, the key question here is, what the significance of the story is. What does the story teach us? Third part of the Gemara, Rabba, and quotes another halacha of Reuven regarding the Sudas Purim. Sudas Purim she'achav alayla lo yatsi yedei chavasam. Question here is what the relationship is between these three parts of the Gemara: the initial statement, the story, and Rabba's information about Sudas Purim. As I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, the key central question here is what the significance of the story is, what the message of quoting the story is. So there are many Rishonim who understand that the Gemara quotes this story of a check to the halacha. For example, Malabar writes, top of page 2. If can remember the Rabba. The Rabba's statement is rejected the halacha. Unless halacha sekavase, don't pass in that way. The lav shabbat done the Rebbe Hachim. It's incorrect to do this. Why? Because that's the story teaches you what happens if you do it. This is the top of page 2. Kasav Rabbeinu Efraim. The Gemara quotes Rabbeinu Efraim. Yeah, who moved the Rabba Shachar Rabbeinu? From this story, we see that it's Chalei the Rabba. The Rabba's statement is rejected. Maybe already shown in the service as well. And the Eri elaborates on this perspective. And the Eri says, we're not commanded to get drunk and make fools of ourselves out of simcha. We're not commanded to do something silly like this. We should have a simcha of enjoyment. The point is to get happy and thank Hashem through that. He says, and this Gemara, which seems to say otherwise, for our Pirshu K'tzat Kohen, the Onim already explained to us, in fact, the story is quoted shows us that we don't go that far. So the Meiri has this principle that we shouldn't be getting happy unless the happiness is leading to the right goal of Avas Hashem, of Odah Alanisa. It's similar to the Meiri's Pshat on the Mishnah in Tanis, which we all know, where he says, the simcha we're talking about is a kind of simcha, not holiness, that brings one to recognize and thank Hashem for all the nisim that happened to us in Chodesh Adar. The Meiri, as he wrote, as we saw, he says we shouldn't get drunk and make fools out of ourselves. We see Be'emet in Sefer Bereshis that wine very often leads to that. First example is Noach. We know what happened to Noach when he got drunk. The second is Lot. We know what happened to him when his daughters got him drunk. This is the backdrop of the Gemara in Brachos Daf Mem, which says that the tree that Adam Arishan ate from, was a geffen tree. Rabbi Meir Shita. She'en l'chadav she'mevi yalala ala adam eliyayin. Wine brings crying and suffering to people. Rambam and Mona Gufman elaborates on this and says, people who get together for a drink fest, as drunk people, it's more embarrassing than people who get together naked and go to the bathroom. He says, because going to the bathroom, you have to do. You should get together to do it, but you have to do it. Getting drunk is not something people should do. And it's embarrassing and silly. So according to all this, what we're saying is that the story tells us that we're not supposed to follow this halacha. The Meiri's understanding of the story, the Meiri and Ephraim itself, makes a lot of sense according to his girsa. What do I mean? To go back to page 1. Who made the statement, Mechai v'inish l'psumei? Who made the statement? Rav. According to our girsa, who was involved in the story with Rav Zera? The Rabbi. According to the Meiri, who was the one with Rav Zera, page 2? The Rava. Why does that make sense? If it was Rava who was involved with Rav Zera, You could say the story happened after Rava Paskined it. Rava Paskined it. He was doing it. And look what happened. So the story teaches us that you shouldn't do such a thing. You could compare this to the Gemara in Yom Daf Chaf Beis, which says initially they used to decide which kohen would work the avodah on the mizbeach by racing up. When they raced, people pushed, people killed each other. Terrible. So from then they changed it and said, from now on, we're going to do a lottery. No more racing and pushing, etc. They say same thing here. It was all going to get drunk. We saw what happened with Rava, and that's why they rejected it. But our girsa again isn't Rava. Our girsa is Rabba. Rabba lived before Rava. So, if the point of the story is not to do it, it doesn't make sense that Rava is passing in halacha after Rabba had the story. Again, the Yiri who has the gifts of Rava makes sense, right? It makes sense that you could say that it's rejected. But we again have the gifts of Rabba, and Rabba's passing it afterwards anyway. And in fact, within the story itself, it even seems like the story didn't lead to it being rejected. Why? Because the next year, Rabba invited Rav Zera again. What did Rav Zera say? I'm not risking it. Why? I thought halacha was rejected. I guess it wasn't rejected. And that's why most Rishonim hold that this story doesn't teach us to reject the halacha. So what does the story teach us? So many Rishonim hold that the story teaches us to limit the halacha. To limit them. Based on the kind of person you are, or based on the amount you're drinking. Page 3, that's not what type of person. Gemara in Shabbos Daf Kufin says that people born in a certain time of the year, Ma'adin, they're going to be murderous kind of people. The Rabbah said, I was born then. Abaye said to him, Maranami, Anish V'Kotel, indeed, you killed someone. When did Rabbah kill someone? I'm saying, Chassam Sofer in a tshuva writes that this Gemara is important because it helps us understand why Rabbah did it, how it happened. And it teaches us that people like Rabbah shouldn't do this at the Purim Suda. If you're a violent kind of person, you shouldn't get drunk. That's what the story teaches you. In fact, Chassam Sofer adds that even though we generally say Shluchei Mitzvah and Nizakin, it doesn't apply when there's Shchia Chazeka. And if you're the kind of person who is very dangerous, violent, you shouldn't be getting drunk. Kolbo, one of the French Rishonim, understands that the story teaches us to limit the amount. Kolbo writes, those babes, page 3, not to get drunk, Shashifas Isur Gomer. The Ein Lecha Avera Gedola Mizu. It's a short statement. Shehu Gorim Yigil Arai Shvichas Dam. Kama Avera is a lesson that brings a person to do Averas. Ach Sheyishte Yosef Domaat. Drink a little more than you're used to. Kidei Sheyir B'Lismach, so that you'll be very happy. With the Sameach of Yomim, and to make the poor happy. Zoe has Simcha Shlema. This is a very beautiful and important idea. True Simcha is when you are a happy person and you make other people happy. When you get angry and depressed and mean, that's not the kind of Simcha we have in mind. I don't even know if we would call that Simcha. What's interesting is that if you look at Megillah Esther Perek Tes, when it talks about how the Jews were knowing Purim on their own before it was turned into a Yom Tov, it says in Pasuk Tes, "Akena Yehudim HaPrazim Yoshem Bari HaPrazos." Next pasuk, pasuk Kaf, it says that Mordechai instituted as a Yom Tov and sent letters around that people should keep the Yom Tov. What did he say they should do? You may mishta the simcha mishloach mon ishtariehu. People, when they celebrate, don't always naturally think about including those who are their friends. Mordechai was teaching us that true simcha means including those who don't have enough to celebrate on their own. And this, of course, reminds us of the Rambam, who writes in Hilchos Megillah that it's better that a person should give a lot of matanos lavyonim than spending money on the Suda and Mishloach Manos. She'ein shem simcha l'dolim b'fa'ara el l'sameach levaniyim v'yesomim v'almanos v'gerim. True simcha is to make those who don't have reason to be happy, happy. And this should remind us of the Rambam in Hilchos Yom Tov, where he writes about Simchas Yom Tov is not to lock yourself in your home and enjoy. It's to make sure that people who don't have reasons to enjoy are being enjoying. Someone who only focuses on his own simcha, says the Rambam, ain't the simchas mitzvah, ela simchas kreso. It's not the simcha of a mitzvah. If it was truly the mitzvah, you would be wanting others to include others. It's simchas kreso. It's your belly. That's not real simcha. The Shalom, the top of page 4. elaborates on this idea of proportionate simcha, and he says, acting like a wild person is the least suffix ra umarva avon plili. It's a sin. You know, hudaman simcha los chok lekalas rosh. We have simcha, not silliness. Kol ha'mevatel tefillah ve'ein shomea mikra megillah ve'mila ve'mila. A person is mevatel tefillah, doesn't hear the Megillah word for word. Harei zechotem mischayev benafsho. Them's fighting words. And he's talking about a different thing, but both things are correct. Simcha should be a positive, constructive one. It shouldn't cause us to lose sight of the mitzvahs. It should be the shem shamayim, the shem mitzvah. Rabbi Vadi Yosef Yechavadas has a tshuva where he talks about the custom in some yeshivas where people become the Rav Purim, they get drunk and they insult each other, insult the rabbis, act in a violent, destructive way. He says, clearly this is not what Purim is meant to be about. And he says, this is not simcha, it's holiness and sichlus. And then he says, last line, Hadvarim Purim, this is obvious, clear. The Shomim Yenam Alem Tavo B'Chastov. Gotta know how to channel it right. In fact, the Yad Ephraim writes very beautifully that he had a dream, and in his dream it was revealed to him that that's what Ad V'lo Yada means. Ad V'lo Yada is Ad V'lo Ad B'chlal. Till you get to the point where you lose your ability to distinguish, not mamish, that point. And he continues, the Yad Ephraim, the story is to show you what happens when people cross the line we shouldn't cross. So thus far we saw two explanations of what the story teaches us. One, the story teaches us to reject the halacha. Alamor, the name of Rabbi Ephraim, the Meiri. Two, the story teaches us to limit it. Teaches us how to give a kind of halacha properly. The right person, the right amount. But if you look at the bottom of page 4 of the Rif just brings the halacha, no story. The Torah brings the halacha, no story. So the Pri Chadash says, this is to teach you that the story is irrelevant. We keep the halacha as it's written. In fact, the Pri Chadash points out what we said before. Quotes Rabbeinu Ephraim, that you see from the story the halacha is rejected because it's not right. Because if so, why did Reb Zera not want to eat the next year if the halacha was rejected? And he says at the end, the reason the Gemara brings the story, Lashmina, the members Rabbi Kipashta, to show you that you're supposed to be Mekayim at Mamish. In fact, what the Pri Chadash says, we already find in the Sefer Eshkol, one of the Rishonim, who says the fact that Reb Zera was worried about having the Suda within the next year shows you that the halacha is still meant to be done and meant to be done Mamish completely. Whoa. So this last Shita, the Rif and the Tur, forces us to really ask the question. And even according to the Balamor and according to the Kolbo, you need to understand why initially they did it that way. But according to the Torah and the Rif, it's an even stronger question because it's supposed to do that way the halacha. So what's pshat? Why would we do such a thing? So I want to share with you two ideas which explain this halacha. One is the basis of the halacha, where it comes from, why we do it, and the second is the deeper meaning of it. Let's take a look at both of them. Let's start on page 5 with Avud Raham, one of the Spanish Rishonim. He says that the reason we do this is because, let's start with this question. We see that it's a dangerous thing. It gets people in trouble. Yesh Lom, a third line, and they shakol anisim shenasa the Yisrael b'meach hashverish hayu al yidei mishnah. All of the nisim that happened in the Megillah happened through a mishnah, and he talks about the different stages. The first one is the mishnah that led to Vashti being killed, and we know how important Vashti being killed was. It was the whole beginning of things. The second mishnah is when Esther was appointed, and at that mishnah Mordechai heard about Biktam B'teresh, and he was able to rat them out. That was also important for them. And Haman, God bless you, Haman's fall was through the mishnos that Esther made. The Mishnah Berurah in his Bir Halacha quotes this in the name of the Eliyahu Rabbah. This is the explanation. At the bottom of page 5, moving on to page 6, I show you all these Mishnahs that I've described. And how many times the word Mishnah appears. Decent enough. Take a look here. You see it? If you look at the top of page 6, Perek Tes, this explains why the day of Purim was established as a Yom Mishta V'Simcha, not a day of Suda, a day of Mishtos, a day of drinking. That's why when you come to my house on Purim, usually come to someone's house, right? They set the table. I have a platter of meat in the middle, a schnitzel. You come to my house, bottles. That's what a Mishta is, right? Mishta is to drink. It's a Yom Mishta V'Simcha. Not only are you supposed to have a Mishta, it's a day of Mishtos. Whoa! I think this, by the way, can explain to us a very interesting formulation of Adelo Yuda. Adelo Yuda. Where does that come from? How did the Nes of Purim happen? Okay, but there obviously happened because Hashem, but how did it happen? It happened because Esther got Achashverosh drunk. Once she was drunk, she was able to get him to swing things in the right direction. Who was on Achashverosh's team? Who was his number one minister? Haman, right? Who was the guy who was not part of his court? Mordechai. But when you get drunk, you can lose that ability to distinguish. And Esther got Achashverosh to the point where Adelo Yuda Ben. Here we go. We reenact what happened through the Nes by drinking in that way. Ksav Sofer, Sam Sofer, in his Pirush HaMaseches Megillah, connects this machlokas between Rabbah and Rava. What he sees as a machlokas between Rabbah and Rabbah, but not a machlokas, but Rabbah who passed in the halacha and Rabbah who got in trouble because of it. Well, there are two explanations about why Esther made mishtos. If you take a look next source, page 6, the Gemara in Megillah Daf Tesvav asks, what did Esther see to invite Haman to the Mishnah? Rabbah says, Lifnei Shever Gaon. Rava says, B'choma Mashisis B'shteihem. Let me explain the two pshat. Rabbah says to build up his gaiva. He wanted Haman to feel so great about himself and let his guard down. Look, Esther's inviting me to the Mishnah. She likes me so much. The king likes me so much. He would let his guard down, and then Esther could get him. Rava says, "B'chomam asheses mishteyam." When you put Rishayim up on a pedestal, it gets them to be targeted by God. Through a Mishnah, God targets people. The Ksav Sofer explains, according to Rabbah, there's no deeper significance to the fact that she got invited Haman to the Mishnah. And therefore, because there's some deeper significance to it, Rabbah wasn't protected at his Suda with Rav Zera, because there was no reason for him to get drunk this way. But according to Rava, the whole purpose of the Suda was to bring it to the downfall and rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore there was halachic significance to getting drunk. And therefore that's why Rava said to do it, and then we're protected. And Ksav Sofer says, and that's why we pass on halacha this way, because we pass in the Gemara says later that all of the reasons Esther got Haman to the Suda were all right. So that's one of the right reasons, and that's why. I'm just trying to show you the deeper level of this idea. Before we take questions about it, the idea that our Mishnah is meant to commemorate their Mishtos and the way the Nes happened helps explain a few things. If you look at the bottom of page 6, Rashi writes, Lipsume, Yeshtakar B'Yayim, Dafka Yayim. Rokeach writes it also because that's what they had. If you look in the Megillah, it says many times, Mishnah Yayim. It also explains why the drinking shouldn't just be walking around, it should be at a Suda. Language of the Rambam and other Rishonim. That is at a Suda. If you look back at the Gemara we saw before, Rabbah and Reb Zera invited him to a Suda, to drink at a Suda, because that's the way they drank. In fact, if you look back at page 1, remember we pointed out that right after we talk about the drinking, we mention another halacha of Rabbah about a Suda, that you're not yet to the Suda at night. It makes sense if drinking is part of the Suda. I'll just mention in passing about this point, Suda's Purim is supposed to be during the day. It's good to eat at night and enjoy it. It's nice, it's appropriate, but it's not the Ikra Suda. Drinking also. It's good to drink at night, but the Ikra drinking is during the day, at the Suda. So there's not so much basis for drinking at night. And if you're sure you're going to get sick and then miss Megillah and miss the real Suda, that's very silly. So a person wants to drink a little bit of Purim, it's okay. So you know what a little bit is for you. Be very careful. The Suda, like we said earlier, wine, in a limited amount after you eat at the Suda, slowly, so a person can get happy the way a person should get happy. Questions about what we saw thus far? Yes?
Rebbe said that one of the reasons,
Loud?
one of the reasons Rebbe said for getting drunk was like Esther got, or Adel was Esther got Ashverosh.
Right. What's your question?
So why are we trying to emulate Achashverosh?
What?
We're trying to emulate Achashverosh.
Maybe because that, well, you know what, let's use that as a transition. What a strange way to commemorate the Nes. Maybe we should go out and get Goyim drunk. You know what I'm saying? We should go get Goyim drunk and there you go. Why would we put ourselves in the situation to be like Achashverosh? Asks Sam Heller, right? It's a good question, no? Who thinks it's a good question? That brings us to the last part of this year. What's the deeper significance? So if you take a look at the top of page 7, the Gemara in the Purim, Daf Kuf Lamed says, Haman min HaTorah minayim. Where do you find Haman in the Torah? And it answers, Hamin ha'etz. This is a very strange connection, especially because the word Hamin Ha'etz isn't the word Haman. It's Hamin, right? We all know the pasuk in Bereshit Taragin, where the Nachash is trying to get a woman to eat from the tree. It says, don't worry, you won't die. God knows that when you eat from the tree, your eyes will be open, you'll be like God. You'll distinguish between good and bad, and that's why He doesn't want you to drink it. Later, to eat it. Later, when God cross-examines Chava, He says, Mi yigid lecha ki eru mata? Who told you that you're naked, that you're hiding? Hamin ha'etz asher tzidizim, so that's what He's referencing. And the truth is, the snake was right. The snake was right. Eating from the Eitz Hadas makes people wiser. An ability to distinguish without God. You see this from later on in the parak, when Hashem describes the need to exile man from Gan Eden, because man is now like a godly figure who knows the difference between good and bad on his own. And now it's a problem for him to remain alive. Won't know his limitations. What does this have to do with the story of Purim and with Haman? So the Maharal, in his Sefer on Purim, called the Or Chadash, has a very beautiful, powerful explanation, and he writes, Das, our deeper understanding of things, often makes us feel like we are in control. We know, we can distinguish, we can plan. And sometimes it causes people to feel like they don't need God. And that was the original tension in eating from the Eitz Hadas. God sometimes creates situations that we don't understand and don't know how to work out in order to remind us of our dependency. Purim was such a situation. Vayir Shoshan Navocha. People were shocked. They didn't know what to do. Kind of like today. All these feinschmeckers who think that Judaism depends on themselves and Jewish safety depends on themselves and the amounts of billions of dollars they invest in Super Bowl commercials. And now they're frustrated. What's going on? This is insane. All these lies and demonization. And well, that's pshat. God creates situations where we can't figure it out and we can't deal with it, so we realize our dependency on Him. To a certain extent, we sometimes need to step back from our das and feel that dependency. Or in other words, drinking ad lo yada is a way of returning to our state before man ate from the Eitz Hadas. Hashverosh getting drunk was the technical example of this, but there's a deeper significance of this for us with a very big message. And this is assumably what we mean when we say that we're supposed to drink ad lo yada, till we can no longer make these distinctions anymore. Why? As we say in Shoshanas Yaakov, Lohodiach, to make it be known, to teach ourselves, Shekol kol vecha lo yevoshu v'lo yikomu lanetzach kol achosim. That those who yearn for God, those who protect themselves under God's wings, such people are really protected and really put themselves in the right place. This, of course, helps us understand the famous Gemara in Shabbos Daf Peches about the new level of Kabbalah Satorah at Purim. It's not a conscious das decision, but a real connection to it. And I think it's summarized beautifully by the words of Rav Kook in his Siddur, bottom of page 7. But Purim nishma al kol ish Yisrael hamatzak b'Torah Hashem or ratzon amiti l'chor b'Torah v'drocha. On Purim, a Jew who really is connected to the Torah finds a new ratzon, a true ratzon, to choose Torah in its path. Shemarin shafilu b'shechluso ein nisami dar Hashem. Shows that even when he's drunk, he doesn't steer off the path. The drunkenness of Ad lo Yada makes a statement about our reliance on God, and also expresses a deeper character, deeper essence of ourselves. What comes out is not what we calculate and want to say, but who we actually are, what we actually are. It's both a basic level of reliance and a basic level of expression of identity, both of which are important. Let's reflect on this for a moment before we take questions. We're reflecting. Okay, yes, Mr. Frogel.
Yeah, is it this Or Chadash that's saying that it's going back to the pre-Eitzadas? Isn't that a little contradictory to like the one Brachos that says Eitzadas was a grapevine? Or
why is it contradictory?
Because one's saying that we're going back to that time when saying it was
the notion that the grafen is connected to das, in and of itself has that, before you talk about any of this. You can say that the fact that gef is connected to das shows you what das can lead to when it's done the wrong way. So now the obvious question is, okay, Rebbe, we had a shir, it's an even shir. The Rambam, the Reuven, the Rashi, the Tosfos, we saw the Balamor, we saw the Kolbo, we see the Rif, so what do we do? So we know, Raman wrote that out, so what do? We talk to our friends, we look online and see what people are writing on social media, and we decide what we want to do. That's it, right? Okay, everyone should have a great Purim. If there's anyone who is a real Orthodox in the B'nai Torah, they want to know that we take a look at the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, let's take a look at page 8. Like just to get to the Shulchan Aruch, we start with the Rambam. The Rambam writes, "Take a kol desiv l'zushi yochal basav yitakim to b'no k'fi esher tim seyada v'shosi yayin ad sheyishtaker v'yiradim b'shichras." Very interesting shir the Rambam gives. You drink wine until you're drunk, whatever that means, and you fall asleep out of drunkenness. Wow. Okay. Halacha. The Maharil brings us down halacha. Rambam's formulation. Could be the Rambam's idea of connecting it to sleeping. It's connected to the Gemara in Baba Basra Daf Ayin Gimel, which talks about a person who drinks and is commanded mivsami to go to a parkid. He's high out of drinking and he lies down. Says the Rashbam, go to a parkid. She shows him lying down like someone drunk. So it could be lipsume. That's how the Rambam understood it. Lipsume. Okay, that's very interesting. Anyone Yemenite? Okay, so it doesn't matter. We got to look at the Shulchan Aruch. Chayev inish lipsume bepuraya ad lo yada ben ar haman lebarach Mordechai. Boom. That's it. If you're Sephardi, depends if you're Sephardi. You want to be Sephardi. Okay. Shulchan Aruch says Chayev inish lipsume bepuraya ad lo yada ben ar lebarach Mordechai. Does he say the halacha was rejected? No. Does he say the halacha is limited? No. If you're Sephardic, although you could say, Bavadia say for Sephardic. Okay. Hagar, the Rama writes, Yesh Omrim, the Ein Sarach Leishtaker Kol Kach Ela Sheyishta Yosem Milimuda. We saw that, the Kolbo. V'yishan, okay. Umitoch Sheyishan Ein Yodem in Ar Ham Levarach Mordechai. That's the Rambam, that's quoted by the Mario. All right. So first of all, does the Rama say you shouldn't? Does he say you shouldn't get drunk? What's he saying? Eino tzarech. You don't have to. You can rely on. Right? You can rely on the kolbo drinking more than you usually do and going to sleep. Essentially, how he combines those two shitos, right? Then he adds, whether you drink a lot, you drink a little, as long as you mechavan liba l'shamayim. We know how important our heart is in avodas Hashem. This week's parsha, Parshas Truma, from the Chassidish we had yesterday. You see this in Divrei Yaman Aleph, Perach of Ches, when David HaMelech is passing on the Masorah to Shlomo, he says, Da, it's Elokei avicha v'yavdeu b'leiv shalom v'nefesh chafetza ki kol levavos darash Hashem, because God wants the heart. Rambam writes powerfully, in his Pirush HaMishnayos, Ratzah Kodesh Baruch Hu le'zakas es Yisrael lefikach hirbelam Torah mitzvos Pashat Pshat. The more mitzvahs we have, the more shchirus we have. The Rambam writes, Neikari emunah b'Torah, to know that when a person keeps a mitzvah, the Taragin mitzvahs properly, without any incorrect kavanos, purely l'shem shamayim v'avos Hashem, that's when we get to Olam Haba. So God gives us a lot of mitzvahs, so hopefully one of them we do with the right kavanah. Wow, how important kavanah is. Echad amar v'echad amamit. Like the Gemara writes in Menachos Afkuf Yud, Torah writes the phrase reach nichoach both by the korban olah of a behema and the korban olah of an oaf, which is much less chicken, not meat. Also writes it by the mincha, soulless, to teach you the same reach nichoach. Talking about echad amar v'echad amamit. I think when I was growing up, it was cool to get drunk. So you have to say, whether you drink a little or a lot, just make sure it's L'Shem Shamayim. Today, it's like not socially accepted to not get drunk. I have to say the opposite. If you're drinking a lot, it could be you're L'Skav L'Shamayim. If you're drinking only a little, it could be you're doing it because you're hooty-tooty. Don't drink a lot to impress someone. Don't drink a little to be hooty-tooty. Drink what you drink. Now the truth is, in most contexts, it's very hard to drink in a proper way, not just in a not dangerous way, but in a truly meaningful way. And that could be why the Mishnah Berurah writes, on the words of the Rama, V'yashin mitoch sheyashin v'chein roi lasos, according to the Pri Megadim. That's the right way. So definitely those who say that you shouldn't, in the Mishnah Berurah, that's the right way. Chayyadim goes even further and says, Hayodei b'yatzma sheyizal zalaz b'mitzvah min ha-mitzvahs min yatil sedayim v'bracha b'echs ha-mazon, o shelo yispal mincha, omar bo sheyinu kalos rosh. The person knows he won't do the mitzvah day properly or he'll act incorrectly. Mutav shelo yishtaker, v'kol masav yu l'shem shamayim. Shem shamayim, how are you going to act? What are you going to do? I think a lot of Rabbanim today correctly base themselves on this, especially in communities. People are drinking, out of context, not in the right kind of atmosphere. Definitely makes sense. What's interesting is that the Rama adds, Tov lasov man b'Torah kodem sheyaschal asuda. It's good to learn Torah a little bit before you start the Suda. Smach l'davar la'yehudim ha'isa'orah v'simcha darshinim orah zu Torah. If you look at the Rama's Darkei Moshe on the Torah, he elaborates on this, and he says that a person who does this, he megina alav shelo yara lo kilkul b'Suda. The Torah will protect him, that he won't end up having a problem during the Suda. Kilkul. You could say that it's a segula. Okay, we believe in segulas, but you can also say a person who learns Torah before him, gets himself in the right mindset, understands what he's trying to do with the Suda, and then he ends up doing the Suda, right? And this is why Purim is a very busy day. In the morning you have Shabbos, you have Megillas Esther, and then you want to go to Reb Levin's house, and then you want to give Mishloach Manos to each other, and breakfast, and it's a busy day. But I think it's kedai for people to make time to learn before the Purim Seder. And my suggestion is to learn Mussar Seder. Some Mussar about the right perspective of life. Maybe the Shevach will choose a good piece to learn. A good Mussar perspective, right, Nagar, before the Purim Seder. I think it's very important. Kedai. I'm getting my hat on. I don't have time. I'm getting my Yarzel tall hat. I gotta get my banana costume, my pickle costume. I gotta get Rafi Mark's pickle costume. I'm busy. I'm busy. I gotta put on my Thank You Hashem Real Yidden costume. You know what I'm trying to say? Onesies, twosies, threesies. Confused. But we should learn a little before the Purim Seder for this reason. So again, I mentioned it before and I reiterate now. Please do not drink anything in yeshiva unless you're following two guidelines. Number one, you're drinking wine. Number two, you're drinking it at a protected Purim Seder in yeshiva, chaverim, with the Rebbe, not whatever. Three, you're not leaving the building afterwards. You don't have plans to leave the building after you drink. Four, you drink after you've eaten. Slowly, wine of a normal proportionate amount. Okay, it's up to one bottle for most people. You're doing that, hopefully it'll be an inspiring thing. Otherwise you get sick, you get other people sick, you act mean, you embarrass yourself, you embarrass other people. That's not what it's about. No one has to drink. You can rely on, you have to drink. It says you have to drink more than limudo. Depends which high school you went to. So for some high schools that's a lot. Trying to say that's going to stay limudo might be a chumrah. You know what I'm saying? Some people say you have to drink Adla Yoda. And some people say, yes, limudo. For them it could be a chumrah. Adla Yoda with a certain amount of yes, limudo. What do you mechayiv mean? And say everyone has to drink yes, limudo. Chumrah is personal, not by your high school. Limudo. Joe, you're laughing too much. Everyone has to drink yes, limudo and go lie down. If you want to drink more than that, you have to make sure you're doing it right. Shem Shammai. Shem Shammai, you want to do it right. Any questions? Okay, Wednesday, I'm going to Shem Shiur and Megillas Esther. Getting into the spirit. Great Eitan Isaac's flyer. Wow. Eitan, make another one for next week, hopefully, if you're willing. You'll see who's cooking. No, I'm dirty. It's giving a Purim shit in your stomach. You know what I'm saying? Good. Okay, I'll have to get it together. You should probably have to keep a green guard on his haircut. In case you didn't notice, he did in honor of being Chazan today. Special Chazan haircut. Okay, I'm Shannon Kofa Aleph.